Hello everybody, my name is KingStix and welcome back to another Discord AMA where I try to answer your League of Legends related questions or otherwise to the best of my abilities. First question comes from Warrior5230. What is your favorite Minecraft mod? Honestly, I've only played Minecraft a handful of times. Typically when I was in high school, me and my buddy would log on to servers, do the function to remove people's god mode and to teleport them to our location. We'd do that at the same time and then we'd kill them. That was about it. I never actually cherished or played the game for my own personal enjoyment. I've got Bardon ask, would you be able to release a video, best champs to play during placements, jungle support ADC, and or tips on how to win placements with the best possible outcome? Recently, I have actually released a video on how to win all of your placement games, or at least most of them. I don't believe there is a certain champion set that you can play to win all your placement games. I think that is very specific on the individual, on what champions you already play, or what champions you have mastered. In general, play your best champions and dodge games you know you're not going to win, and that's how you're going to win your placement games. If you want more information, definitely go check out the video. Darkness asks, could you do a Shyvana guide? I don't really intend on doing a Shyvana guide in the near future. I don't believe she's a healthy champion. For her to perform optimally, she has to do a power clear, which isn't optimal whatsoever in lower elo. In lower elo, you need to be putting out ganks and getting lane pressure. She is still a strong pick if the enemy jungler doesn't abuse you in the early game or counter jungle you, but in general, I can't support her playstyle. Therefore, I don't really intend on putting out a guide on her unless she gets changed or buffed. Mr. Alex Matt asks, what does Oprichnik mean? Oprichniki was a term given to a member of the Oprichnikina, which was an organization established by Tsar Ivan the Terrible to govern a division of Russia from 1565 to 1572. It was essentially his private, most trusted policeman in a way. The only reason why I even know this term is because I played loads of Age of Empires 3, especially Asian Dynasty. I was a Russia main. I really loved using the Oprichniks. They were really OP raiding cavalry, so I looked into the history and I thought it was pretty neat. Guilty Win asks, is KingStix Challenger? No, I am not technically Challenger. I got several accounts to Masters, two of which were my own, one of which was not mine. At some point during this season, I'm going to make an attempt to get to Challenger on the NA server. Keith912 asks, why does all pro players don't build Titanic Hydra on Warwick? They just leave it as Hydra. In higher elo, it's harder to snowball on Warwick because laners play safer and junglers play smarter. With that being said, if you're not snowballing or getting ahead early on Warwick, building Titanic Hydra isn't that useful, so they'll typically end up getting more support styled items or more HP items. If you are going to be building Warwick in that fashion, there's really no point in picking him in the first place because there's way better support characters you can pick in the jungle than Warwick. Jay Stewie asks, will anything really happen to assassins in the tank meta? Right now, I wouldn't really consider the current meta the tank meta. Maybe in lower elo perhaps. In a higher elo, assassin junglers and early game junglers do abuse tank junglers fairly hard. If you are in lower elo, typically playing a tank jungler is better because you can still gank and such. In lower elo, typically playing a tank jungler is much safer since the games do go longer. Tank junglers will scale much better than the assassin jungler will. What do you think the best AD carries to play in Plat? I'm getting tired of playing mid. AD carries I would recommend you play in Plat would be things like Kog'Maw and Jinx. At that point, your support should have a general idea on how to pill for you. If you are going to play Kog'Maw, make sure you have at least one tank on your team. Once you get good at Kog'Maw and Jinx, I would highly recommend also picking up Twitch. I don't recommend him if you are newer to ADC, because Twitch is very abusable in lane. He has really short auto attack range. However, late game, Twitch is probably stronger than Jinx or Kog'Maw since he does have a little bit more range and he has a massive attack speed steroid coming out of his Q. Benny asks, what do you think of Tracker's Knife and Zombie Ward on Warwick? Is it worth the vision seeing the enemy jungler 24/7 over Skirmisher Saber? I wouldn't ever recommend going Tracker's Knife on Warwick jungle. He needs the extra early game damage and kill pressure that he would get from Skirmisher Saber. Going Zombie Ward is a solid choice. I have been going Ghost Pour a lot, however, it's been kind of ticking me off lately. It's hard to use it if you're not getting off proper counter jungling, so overall I probably would recommend going Ghost Ward over the Ghost Pour right now. Which server is easiest to climb in? I would say LAN and Oceanic are the easiest servers to climb in. Turkey's probably number 3. As a general rule, the less people a server has, the less competitive ranked is, and the more people a server has, the much more difficult it is to climb in ranked. Danny6690 asks, what's your opinion on Malphite Jungle? Also, what are the best runes to take on him? Malphite Jungle is much weaker than a normal tank jungler. His clears aren't that fast and he desperately needs a level 6 to gank. I wouldn't really recommend anyone playing him. Now, if for some reason all the other tank junglers like Rammus and Sejuani are banned and the enemy team are all 5 AD. You could still pick him and win the game. In general though, I really wouldn't recommend picking him. If you are going to, you should take Resolve for your main tree and then take Precision or Sorcery for your secondary tree. If you're going to take Resolve main tree, take Grass or Guardian for your keystone. Down Precision, I would probably take Alacrity for the attack speed. And then I'd probably take Coup de Grace. If you're going to go for Sorcery secondary tree, definitely get Ultimate Hat. Malphite really needs his ultimate to be on a lower cooldown. Avery asks, how to counter Urgot? He constantly shits on my team, gets hella tanky, then crawls his creepy ass under my tower and gives me the good old pluck and fuck and one-shots me. Whenever you're playing against Urgot, you have to play around his abilities. His auto attacks on their own don't really do anything. The only way Urgot can really beat anyone in a 1v1 is if he gets really up close on you, basically in melee range, and gets to use his passive on several sides, Echoing Flames. The only way for him to properly do this is if you stand still for a long period of time and just let him walk around you, or if he lands his E, Disdain, which will flip you. What you're going to need to do if you want to beat Urgot 1v1 is manage your spacing to where if he is going to hit you with his E, he's going to be hitting you with the tip. That way you can dodge it as easily as possible. If he does hit you with this, you don't want to fight him. You want to try to get away from him unless you're way more fed and he's way lower on HP. Another thing you need to do to beat Urgot is in lane, be looking out for his Q, his corrosive charge. You really don't want him to hit you with this. It's going to slow you by a ridiculous amount, 45% for a whole second, which is going to make it really easy for him to land his E. So first and foremost, dodge his Q, that way he can't land his E, and try to stay at mid range. That way if he does go to land his E, you'll have more time to react since it will be with the tip. I do recommend looking at the Urgot wiki page, that way you can read the cooldowns of his different abilities and what they do. For example, his E is on a 16-second cooldown, so in the early and mid game, whenever he's using that, you can just count down your head for 16 seconds and then you'll know you'll be safe during that duration. In terms of late game fighting Urgot, just kite him. It's kind of like fighting an Alawi. You don't all want to bunch up on top of him. It's better to just CC him and kill him from a distance typically, or to poke him down before the fight actually happens since he is fairly short range. Sengul asks, what do you think of Rumble? Can he carry and how to use his ultimate wisely? Rumble can carry very hard. He is team reliant in the sense of if his team doesn't follow up on his ultimate or doesn't set up a Rumble ultimate, it's very difficult for Rumble to win his games even if he is playing properly. This is why whenever you see Rumble, it's typically in a higher elo or in the pro scene. When you're looking to use Rumble's ultimate, try to make fights in the jungle. The jungle spaces are very close cornered with walls on both sides. You don't want the enemies to be able to escape whenever you ult since it is such a long duration. If you're not fighting in the jungle and you're fighting in wide open spaces, you want to wait until the enemy engages onto your team. That way they've used all their dashes, jumps, flashes typically, and that way when you use your ultimate, they'll take as much damage as possible. The only other way you would use your ultimate is if your team has a lot of CC, like I said, Juani ulti, and a Mumu ulti, a Gnar ulti, and several people of the enemy team get stunned, then you drop your ultimate right on top of them. That way they're taking a minimum of a second and a half while they are CC'd. The only other way you could possibly use it is use it to kill still or to kill someone as they're running away. This typically isn't best because that means someone else on your team was carrying the team fight and you should have been using your ult during the team fight. 024 Nate asks, what do I do as Warwick if my initial still is met with the top laner? It's hard to give you a straight answer since it is highly situational. In a lot of cases, this can be due to how you invaded. You went in too early or you walked past an enemy ward because you were walking the wrong way. Assuming you didn't do that and this top laner just stayed there for a long time even after the buff spawn, a lot of times you will have to go back to your red buff or your blue buff, whatever side you're on, and do that instead. Most of the time though, this shouldn't be an issue. In a few rare cases where I knew I could easily 1v1 them, I actually go up and straight up kill them. We both use our flashes and I end up getting the kill. Sometimes your top laner comes to help you and you take the buff while he pushes him off. It just really depends on the situation. If you sent in a video clip, I could definitely tell you what you should do based off of that. I'm dead ass. Should you still bring Lethal Tempo on Warwick? Lethal Tempo has become a little bit more situational. I usually take Press the Attack more often at this point. If I do intend on going Blood Razor because the enemy team has a lot of tanks, I'll still go Lethal Tempo because I feel like it gives me a lot more damage output. The only other time I take Lethal Tempo is if I'm duoed with my mid laner. If so, I intend on doing a lot of counter jungling since I can depend on my mid laner. Doing a lot of 1v1s in the early game, Lethal Tempo is a lot stronger in the first couple of levels. What do you think is the best pathing for junglers such as Evelynn, is it best to be invading early or just farm and gank? For champions like Evelynn, you typically want to get level 3 as fast as possible with double buff, so doing something like red buff, wolves blue, or starting blue, doing wolves then red is typically the best way to go. If you don't feel like there's a viable gank top lane or mid lane, you typically don't do this. You'd go for a full power clear. Evelynn can invade the enemy jungler, but only if you feel like they're going to be a low HP jungler. So if it's someone who isn't really made to jungle like Wukong, then of course go invade them. Otherwise, it's not a very good idea since she is so squishy and you can get caught out so easily pre-6 because you don't have invisibility. Also, Evelynn just got nerfed, so I wouldn't really recommend playing her anyways. Veigar Elementary asks, do you have any tips for Veigar and is he worth maining? Also, what is a permaban when playing him? The best tip you can get when playing Veigar is don't be greedy with your Q. It's usually better to hit the enemy champion than it is to actually go for the minions, because if you hit the enemy champion, you're still getting a guaranteed 1 AP. It's also going to be getting them lower on HP, that way they can't bully you off of the minions. Second tip I can give you is whenever your E is on cooldown, you need to be playing especially safe, because if the enemy jungler comes to gank you, you're going to be totally screwed. Veigar is worth maining. It will become much more difficult to win games with him when you're in higher diamond and up. People understand how to abuse him and take advantage of his weaknesses. Up until you're in mid diamond though, Veigar is definitely worth maining and very OP. For a permaban, you should be banning Zed or Fizz. They will destroy you. Zed can go straight through you, block your ultimate with his ultimate, and Fizz can do the same thing with his troll pole, basically blocking all your abilities and going through your E. Being asked, hey guys, I was wondering what's the best jungler for invading early? I mean killing the enemy jungler. In terms of killing the enemy jungler, you'd be good playing Nidalee, Warwick, Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Rek'Sai, and Jarvan. All of these champions have really strong early games and really high 1v1 potentials in the early game. You need to use their high early game built-in power to dominate the enemy jungler and to snowball your lead. If you are new to the jungle, I don't recommend playing champions like these because it will put a lot of pressure on you to make plays that you don't understand rather than getting a good grasp and basics of the game itself. Carl Kemi123 asks, can you recommend any top laner I should invest my time in this season? By the way, I'm a Fiora main. Since you already have a hyper carry AD character, I would suggest getting a tanky champion top lane as well. There will be many situations where your jungler or support isn't playing a tanky champion. In that case, you really don't want to be playing Fiora. For a tanky champion, I would highly suggest going Maokai or Ornn if you need some AP, or going Sion if you need an AD tank. If you're looking for an AP hyper carry, I would suggest something like a Rumble or a Kel. Eaton Pixel asks, are you going to do a vid guide on Udyr Jungle? Udyr Jungle is in a not a good spot right now. There's a lot of champions who do what he does, but much better. If ZZ Rot Portal gets a buff at some point, I'll probably make an Udyr guide, but right now I wouldn't feel right doing it, putting out a guide for a champion that I know isn't very good. Crooks123 asks, why does Shaco feel like he's not worth picking right now, even though I can counter Ka early, or am I wrong? Jungle Shaco and Shaco in general isn't very good right now because how much he's been nerfed in previous seasons, back before Keystones were so powerful and the built-in damage and kit of a champion was more valuable. Shaco was very OP because he's one of the only champions who had invisibility, and it lasted for a very long time. League of Legends repeatedly nerfed him throughout the seasons, cutting his balls off to the point where he could hardly jungle or keep up with other junglers. Now we see him in a point where other junglers not only have more in their kits, but much higher base stats. Mr. Baller asks, what jungle items should a Rammus take versus a Warwick? I've played this matchup many times, and what I found works best is going straight for your Cinder Hulk on Rammus. More specifically, going Red Smite Cinder Hulk. You're going to need this for 1v1s and 2v2s versus Warwick. That way you take less damage and do more damage. Right after getting Cinder Hulk, do not build your boots yet. You do not want to get that. You need to go for a Bramble Vest. That way, if you do get a 1v1 or 2v2 against Warwick, you will destroy him. After Bramble Vest, get your boots of speed and then finish your Thornmail. At that point, there's no way Warwick will be able to 1v1 you or beat you in a 2v2. Septemification asks, what do you do when your team doesn't follow up on your ganks and you're playing a jungler that needs them to? Really, every jungler needs your teammates to follow up on your ganks, assuming the enemies aren't below a quarter HP and you can't one-shot them. There's a couple factors that go into whether your teammates will follow up on a gank. If you're not very good at jungling, a lot of times you might go in for a gank when there's no way your teammates can follow up because your teammates are below quarter health, below half health,
they're really far behind. They're underneath their turret with a massive wave, so they don't want to follow up on the gank because then they're going to lose like 2 or 3 waves of minions. In those situations, it's the jungler's fault if you're ganking at that point. Assuming you're ganking and your teammates aren't nearly dead or have a massive wave at their turret, you need to make sure you ping your teammates before you come in for the gank, or maybe even type a message in chat saying coming for gank bot. At that point, if they choose not to do anything, I wouldn't touch that lane unless I knew I could get it killed by myself. Yasuo the Unforgiven asks, where did the name KingStix come from? I was a Fiddlesticks main whenever I made that name, and I figured I was one of the best ones, so I did King Fiddlesticks, KingStix, and I wanted to make it to where it wasn't like King Fiddlesticks because that'd be a little bit esoteric. So if I just chose KingStix, then it would be a little bit more generic, or people might just think Sticks and I'm KingStix. Spy asks, do you think Wukong will come back into the meta in season 8 as a top laner or jungler? As a top laner, Wukong is okay. I wouldn't say he's anywhere close to pick or ban. He's only good if the enemy team has 1 or less tanks. Ideally, if the enemy team doesn't have any tanks, Wukong is a monster because he can just jump in ult and kill the whole enemy team. If the enemy team has a tank though, it can make it difficult to get in there because they'll get CC'd and shut down fairly quickly. And as a jungler, I wouldn't really recommend picking Wukong jungle at all since he doesn't have any proper sustain in the jungle and can get easily 1v1 by most enemy junglers. Kumio Fox asks, is Elise a good jungler to pick for low diamond? Elise is only a good jungler to pick in low diamond if you understand not only how to gank lanes properly, but also understand how to counter jungle and who to counter jungle. If you don't understand the core aspects of counter jungling and ganking, I wouldn't recommend her because if you don't snowball in the early and mid game as Elise, you fall off super hard past 30 minutes. Pixel0099 asks, is Nocturne a good jungler for low silver? I wouldn't really recommend Nocturne for any elo right now, especially not low elo. Nocturne really needs level 6 to gank, and in low elo, once you're level 3 on pretty much any jungler, it's a viable option to gank lane since enemy laners and your laners don't play very smart. They typically play really aggressive and they're very easy to gank. Rip It's Ken asks, how do you feel about the new Warwick skin? I'm honestly not a big fan of the new Warwick skin. I feel like it's just trying to sell extra skins. It looks a lot like the Wukong skin that's already out. Very cloudy, the same textures and everything. It doesn't feel very unique whatsoever. Zekavol asks, do you have any advice for 1-tricks and 2-tricks? The best advice I could give for any 1-tricks out there is if you are determined to only play one champion, make sure it's a champion that can play at least 2 lanes or 2 different roles. Picking something like York would be a really bad choice for a 1-trick since you can only play him top lane and you can't play any other role or lane properly. I wouldn't really recommend being a 1-trick in general unless you are just concerned about getting the highest rank possible with the least amount of effort. Of course, there is a cutoff point to where being a 1-trick will hinder you, but in general, it's the easiest way to get somewhere like platinum or diamond. If you are a 2-trick, once again, just make sure your 2 champions hopefully correspond to different roles or different lanes. Also, if you are 2-trick, try to make sure one of your champions is a carry champion and the other one's a tank champion. That way, when your team doesn't have very much damage, you can go with the carry champion, and when your team doesn't have a tank, you can go with the tank champion. That is going to wrap up this AMA. There were heaps of questions. I didn't even get through all the ones that are currently on there. Next AMA, I'm going to try to pick up as many of the good ones as I can. So if I didn't answer your question, next AMA, there's a pretty good chance that I will answer it. If you guys enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, it would help me out greatly if you'd like, comment, and subscribe. It does help out a lot more than you think. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.